Welcome into Recruiting with Roos on the Georgia Show. Jake Roos, our DawgsHQ recruiting insider, looking ahead to a big weekend, Georgia and Auburn between the hedges. Jake, the Dogs and the Tigers usually overlap somewhat historically when you're talking about the guys they like to go after on the recruiting trail. How will that reflect in the visit list for Georgia and Auburn this weekend?
That's going to be a big one, Wes. I mean, they got a lot of guys on campus for this one, as you might expect. I mean, Georgia's biggest home game, maybe of the year. You could probably say Tennessee. It's definitely between the two, obviously. And I think that they want to bring in as many guys as they can. And this visit list is taking really nice shape for Georgia. An official visit from Damon Wilson on tap this weekend. I think that's definitely one to watch. Georgia loves that guy. 5-star pass rusher, and they really need some pass rush in this class. He's one of the best in the nation and really long. You know, they have some of those guys in the 6'3", 6'4" range, but they need one of those, 6'6" guys that can really get out there and bend the edge a little bit. Damon Wilson certainly fits the bill. Hearing a lot about Ohio State there, so could be a tough pull, but Georgia very much in the mix, along with Alabama. I think that those are kind of the three schools setting themselves apart. Going to be interesting to see how this visit shapes things moving forward because Damon Wilson is, like I said, a guy that they really want, and he spent a lot of time on campus in Athens over the summer, 4-day trip. Unofficial visit, that's really unusual. You don't see guys come that long for the most part, but he made a great trip, and to follow it up with an official visit seems like a strong indication of how he feels about Georgia.
Jake, I know for the duration of the time you've been in this business and covered recruiting, Auburn has traditionally been up there with Georgia, up there with Alabama, in the top 10, in the top 5 some seasons. That's not the case right now. They're not even in the top 25 in the 2023 class rankings for On3 right now. How much of that is a reflection of Bryan Harsin, and do you feel like Georgia is actually going toe-to-toe with Auburn directly for many recruits, if any, right now?
You know, I do think it's a reflection on Bryan Harsin and his staff. It has to be. Auburn's a program that has historically recruited outstanding, even in times of turmoil, which I feel that they're in right now. I think that they've really got to rewrite this ship if they're going to try to make this last more than one more year on the Plains. I don't know if that'll be the case. We'll see. But, they're not really going toe-to-toe with Georgia for a lot of guys this year. I mean, the guy that probably jumps out to me right now is Roderick Robinson, who will also be on his official visit this weekend, the 4-star. They're not even really going head-to-head, though. I'm hearing a lot more Texas A&M when it comes to him. Auburn's trying to get a foot in the door with him, trying to be a factor. I don't really see it right now, but it's been a very weird cycle in that regard. I mean, Auburn and Georgia not really having much crossover on the recruiting trail, and that's pretty damning, I think, for Auburn because Georgia's after the best. These guys are playing at a different level, I think. I mean, DeQuavius Sori ended up over there. I'm just checking out their commit list right now. DeQuavius Sori, former Georgia commit, he backed off of that. He ends up over there. Jeremiah Cobb, the top player they have committed, he's a guy Georgia, I think, would definitely be interested in speaking with. Outside of that, man, I don't see a lot of guys that jump off the page to me on Auburn's commit list that Georgia went toe-to-toe with them.
You know, I look back and I think about guys like Derek Brown. I mean, what a recruiting battle that was for Georgia, and it's just so strange to look at this rivalry now with that really being in the recent rear view of guys that Georgia really wanted and didn't get. Owen Papo, I don't know if Owen would be playing for Georgia right now the way that Georgia's evaluated that linebacker position, but that one was a hot and heavy battle as well, and it really hasn't amounted to much.
Yeah, no, Zykevious Walker's another guy who jumps off the page to me when I think about those Georgia Auburn battles. Big Cat Bryant was another one. Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, traditionally it really has been a big rivalry for Georgia on and off the field, and it feels like in the Bryan Harsin era that the separation has really begun to creep. I don't think that there's a lot of guys. Let me go back and look at last year's Auburn class because, like I said, 23, there's maybe 1-2 guys. Looking at it over here, I'm going to say there's maybe, again, one or two guys, from last year's class that strike me as guys Georgia would have really been in on heavily. But outside of that, really not a lot of that. And, that's it definitely says a lot, I think, about the evaluation and also the guys, the caliber of guys, because Georgia is talking about a number 2 in the nation class right now. Yeah. Auburn's sitting at 32.
So, just for a couple more minutes here, Jake, outside of the visit list for Georgia this weekend, what are some of the big stories you're keeping an eye on, some of the big names that either have a decision coming up soon or have some recent developments that Georgia fans may be interested in?
Well, I'd definitely be looking towards Samuel Mpemba as the next guy to watch for Georgia. 5-star outside linebacker. Like I said, another one of those edge guys they need so desperately in this class. He'll be on a trip this weekend again. Now, this is the second time he's been in Athens, third time he's seen Georgia. He was at Missouri last week. I think that he's one of Georgia's biggest targets, a guy that they poured into heavily. And I feel really good about where they sit. And his is a recruitment that I don't see lasting all that much longer. So that's what's important about his to watch. Is this could be over by the end of the month, I think. It won't surprise me to see him follow up, take another visit to Georgia at some point, maybe working in an official visit. But outside of that, I think that you're looking at Roderick Robinson. I think you're looking at a couple. There are just guys that don't have dates set, really, is what we're talking about. David Hobbs is a guy who may make a decision sometime in the near future, maybe in that month of November. Jordan Hall's definitely a guy that you want to keep eyes on. Continue to hear Georgia trending well with him. It's kind of an odd time of year because a lot of guys are kind of waiting it out, I think, until National Signing Day at this point. A few guys will get it knocked out before then, but I think for some of your big fish, you're going to have to wait until that early signing period, and that's when everything normally, when the clock strikes December, everything gets a little bit weirder. So I think it's going to be interesting to watch for sure.
One guy who's not a guessing game right now is Raelyn Wilson, the 4-star linebacker out of Florida. He is really thwarting off a lot of teams and fans I've seen that have tried to sway him. Already backed off of the Michigan commitment before committing to the Dogs, and that seems like it couldn't be more of a lock for Georgia right now, and that's great news for the Dogs.
Yeah, no, Raelyn's a huge get for Georgia. I mean, the number 1 inside linebacker in the nation. I mean, anytime you can get the top player at his position, you're going to take that guy. Raelyn is that guy, and a guy that Georgia targeted so heavily. Even with that Michigan commitment, they never relented. They continued to press heavily. And, like you said, he feels like a lock now. I think that it boiled down. Well, it wasn't really. It did boil down to Georgia and Michigan in the end for him. Even the first time he made that commitment. I think ultimately the Wolverines just couldn't hold off the Dogs, but I don't see anybody being able to overtake Georgia in this one. I think Glenn Schumann's record speaks for itself. I think that it's a compelling sell that he's got that inside linebacker room producing some amazing talent right now. I think Raelyn Wilson's got a chance to be one of the next grades.
Kirby Smart's been on the record. He says this is the best staff he's ever had at Georgia. It's really hard to keep those staffs together, but when you have them, you got to appreciate them, and I think it speaks volumes on the recruiting trail as well. Thank you so much, Jake. We'll catch you soon, my man.
Appreciate it, Wes.